What happens when a royal guest completely loses control on live television, turning what should have been a simple morning show appearance into a full-blown disaster? Viewers across America were left stunned, spilling their morning coffee in disbelief. Before we get into what happened, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share your thoughts in the comments, especially if you've ever watched a celebrity completely unravel under pressure. The Good Morning America studio buzzed with its usual pre-show excitement. Michael Strahan, known for his charm and steady professionalism, was preparing for what producers promised would be an easy, uplifting interview. The guest was there to discuss her charitable efforts and upcoming projects, a standard feel-good segment. As the familiar theme music faded, Michael greeted viewers with his signature smile. "Good morning, America. I'm Michael Strahan, and we have a very special guest with us today. Please welcome Meghan Markle." The audience applauded politely as Meghan entered, poised and perfectly styled, her smile polished and practiced. The lights glinted off her jewelry, and for a moment everything seemed picture perfect. "Meghan, thank you so much for joining us this morning." Michael began smoothly. "I know our viewers are excited to hear about your latest charitable work. You've been involved with several organizations recently." Meghan shifted slightly, a flicker of irritation crossing her face. "Well, Michael," she said coolly, "I appreciate you having me, but I have to admit, I'm surprised by how basic that question is. I expected something a little more substantial." A tense silence filled the studio. Michael's practiced smile didn't waver, though his eyes betrayed a flash of surprise. "Of course," he said evenly. "Let's dive a little deeper then. Can you tell us about the specific impact you're hoping to make through your foundation?" "Impact?" Meghan repeated with a condescending laugh. "Michael, you're missing the bigger picture. My work isn't about impact. It's about transformation, changing the entire way we think about social responsibility. But I suppose that kind of vision can be hard for some people to understand." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. This was not the warm, uplifting interview they'd expected. "That's fascinating," Michael replied, keeping his tone steady. "Could you give our viewers some examples of this transformation?" "Examples?" Meghan scoffed. "You're still thinking in such small terms. That's the problem with media. You're all obsessed with sound bites. The work I'm doing operates on a much higher level than that." Michael's composure held firm. "I understand, but many of our viewers might be inspired to get involved themselves. Could you help them understand how they might contribute?" "That's exactly the issue," Meghan snapped. "People always want to contribute without doing the hard work to understand the complexities. They want change gift-wrapped for them. That's not how real progress works, Michael." In the control room, producers were frantically signaling to move on, but Michael stayed calm. "Let's talk about your recent trip to New York," he said, trying to steer the conversation back on track. "What was that experience like?" Meghan's eyes narrowed. "It's interesting that you're focusing on the trip rather than the systemic issues those communities face. This kind of shallow journalism is exactly why progress is so slow." Michael nodded, his professionalism unshaken. "I understand. What do you think are the most urgent issues those communities are dealing with?" "The most pressing issue," she said sharply, "is that people like you, with huge platforms, keep asking the wrong questions. You could be using this moment to make a real difference, and instead, we're stuck in superficial celebrity chatter." The audience shifted uncomfortably, sensing the growing tension. Some viewers at home reached for their remotes, unsure whether they were witnessing an interview or a public implosion. Michael's jaw tightened slightly, but his tone stayed composed. "I appreciate your honesty, Meghan. Our goal here is always to inform and inspire. If there's a specific message you'd like to share, the floor is yours." Meghan's tone sharpened, her words slicing through the tense air. "Michael, this isn't about you giving me a platform," she said coldly. "It's about you actually doing your job. When was the last time you challenged a guest to think beyond their comfort zone? When was the last time you used this show to discuss real issues instead of promoting celebrity fluff. In the control room, chaos erupted. Producers debated cutting to commercial, while the director scrambled to find the camera angles that could capture the train wreck unfolding live. Meanwhile, Michael remained the picture of calm professionalism. His steady demeanor, a stark contrast to his guests' escalating hostility. "We cover a wide range of topics on Good Morning America," he replied evenly. "Today, we invited you to discuss your charitable work because our viewers care about making a difference. But if you'd like to shift the discussion, we can absolutely do that." "Other topics?" Meghan shot back, her voice rising high enough to make the sound engineers wince. "Michael, everything is connected. You can't separate charity from politics, or social justice, or the deep inequalities that plague our society. But I suppose that level of thinking might be too complex for morning television." The insult hung thick in the air. Crew members exchanged uneasy glances, waiting for Michael's response. He clasped his hands in his lap, took a slow breath, and spoke with deliberate calm. "Meghan, I think our viewers would really benefit from hearing how they can get involved. Could we focus on some specific actionable steps?" Meghan laughed bitterly. "Actionable steps? Michael, you still don't get it. The first step is for people like you to stop dumbing down important conversations. The second is to stop treating your audience like they're too simple to handle complex ideas." Her words hit harder now, personal, pointed, and relentless. Michael's patience was being tested in ways few hosts ever experience. Yet he held his composure, knowing millions of viewers were watching to see how he'd handle it. "This is your chance," he said gently but firmly, his voice betraying only the faintest strain. "You're clearly passionate about these issues. Maybe you could tell us what first inspired you to get involved in this kind of work." Meghan didn't hesitate. "What inspired me, Michael," she said with icy precision, "was watching people in positions of influence fail to use their platforms responsibly, present company included." The studio fell completely silent. Even the cameras seemed to pause. Crew members stared, unsure whether they were witnessing bold honesty or outright disrespect. Michael's smile finally faltered, replaced by a steadier, more serious expression. "I'm not sure I understand what you mean by that," he said carefully. "Of course you don't," Meghan replied, waving a dismissive hand. "That's the problem. You sit here asking fluffy questions about photo ops and charity visits, while there are children starving, families torn apart by systemic injustice, and women silenced every day. And your contribution is to ask me about inspiration." Michael's patience was visibly thinning, though his tone remained steady. "Those are incredibly important issues," he said. "If you'd like to address them directly, we can absolutely do that. But attacking me personally isn't helping anyone." "Attacking you," Meghan snapped, her eyes flashing. "I'm educating you, Michael. There's a difference. Though I realize that might be hard for someone who's built a career asking celebrities about their diets and favorite recipes." The jab hit hard. Michael had spent years proving himself as a credible journalist after transitioning from sports, and those who knew him could see his jaw tighten. Yet he refused to lose his composure. "I've had the privilege of interviewing world leaders, activists, and people making real change," he said quietly but firmly. "I take my responsibility to our viewers very seriously." Meghan tilted her head, her tone dripping with mockery. "Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you take your paycheck seriously. There's a difference between responsibility and just showing up for the camera." The control room erupted again, phones ringing, producers shouting, executives panicking. On live television, one of the most uncomfortable moments in Good Morning America history was unfolding, and there was no easy way to stop it. Michael, to his credit, refused to back down. "Meghan, I invited you here as a guest on our show," he said evenly, his composure holding firm. "I've given you every opportunity to share your message with our audience. But I won't sit here and let you insult me, our show, or our viewers." "Your viewers," Meghan repeated with a sharp, contemptuous laugh. "Michael, your viewers are part of the problem. They sit comfortably in their living rooms, sipping coffee and feeling virtuous for watching a segment about charity work, but they're not actually doing anything to create real change." The camera caught several audience members looking genuinely offended. These were real people who had taken time out of their morning to attend the taping, and now they were being ridiculed by the guest they'd come to see. Michael's protective instincts kicked in. "I think you're underestimating our audience, Meghan," he said, his voice steady but edged with firmness. "The people watching this show are teachers, nurses, parents, small business owners, people who work hard every day to support their families and contribute to their communities." "Contribute?" Meghan scoffed, her tone rising again. "Michael, showing up to work and paying taxes isn't contribution. It's basic functioning. Real contribution requires sacrifice. It requires challenging the status quo. It requires making people uncomfortable. But I suppose that's too much to ask from people who get their worldview from morning television." Now, the insults weren't just aimed at Michael. They were aimed at millions watching at home. Social media lit up instantly, outrage pouring in as viewers reacted to what they were witnessing in real time. Michael leaned forward slightly, his professional mask beginning to crack. "Meghan," he said, his tone tightening, "you need to be very careful about how you characterize the people who watch this program." "Careful," she shot back. "Michael, careful is the problem. Everyone's so afraid of offending someone, of shaking the system, of stepping outside the safe little box that keeps everything comfortable. Meanwhile, the real issues go unaddressed because people like you are too careful to ask the hard questions." Michael's jaw tightened. "What hard questions would you like me to ask?" he said, his voice lower now, a hint of challenge creeping in. Meghan leaned back with a smirk that could cut glass. "Here's one. When was the last time you used your platform to challenge your viewers' assumptions? When was the last time you made them uncomfortable with truths they didn't want to hear? When was the last time you did anything other than serve up easily digestible entertainment disguised as journalism?" That struck a nerve. Michael had endured personal insults, watched his guest tear into his audience, and kept his composure through it all. But questioning his integrity as a journalist was a step too far. "I've covered natural disasters," he said firmly. "Interviewed families who've lost everything, highlighted social injustices, and given a voice to people fighting for real change. I don't need to insult my guests or my audience to prove my commitment to journalism." "Don't you?" Meghan shot back, her tone openly hostile now. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you need to do something, anything, to prove you're more than just a pretty face, reading lines off a teleprompter." The studio fell silent. Even the most seasoned crew members froze, stunned by the sheer disrespect. Michael's hands clenched in his lap. For a moment, it looked like he might finally lose control. Instead, he drew a deep breath and spoke with quiet dignity. "Meghan, I think it's clear this interview isn't going in a productive direction. Perhaps we should move on to our next segment." "Oh, now you want to move on," she sneered. "How convenient. The moment things get real, when someone finally challenges you to rise to the occasion, it's time to move on to something more comfortable." "This isn't about comfort," Michael replied, his voice rising just enough to command the room. "It's about respect. Respect for our viewers, for this platform, and for the people who make this show possible. You've had every opportunity to share your message, but instead, you've chosen to insult me and the people who watch this program." Meghan's next words would become infamous. She leaned forward slightly, her expression hard and cold. "Respect?" she said, laughing bitterly. "Michael, respect is earned, not given. And frankly, I haven't seen anything this morning that suggests you've earned it." The audience gasped audibly. Several crew members exchanged disbelieving glances as the control room scrambled to cut to commercial. But Michael wasn't done. Not yet. For years he'd built a reputation on professionalism, kindness, and respect. Now, faced with a guest intent on tearing all of that down, he was about to reach his breaking point. Still, before he did, he gave her one final chance to redeem herself. "Meghan," he said, his voice steady but heavy with meaning. "I'm going to give you one more opportunity to explain to our viewers what exactly you came here to say." Michael's voice softened, but his words carried unmistakable authority. "Meghan, I'm giving you one last chance. Tell our viewers what you hope to accomplish by coming on this show today." Her expression twisted into disdain. "What I hope to accomplish, Michael, was to have an intelligent conversation with someone capable of rising above the mediocrity that passes for journalism on morning television. Clearly, I overestimated your abilities." That was the breaking point. Michael's polite smile vanished, replaced by a look of quiet, focused determination. A look anyone familiar with him knew meant trouble. "You know what, Meghan?" he began, his voice calm but resolute. "I've been in this business for a long time. I've interviewed presidents, world leaders, Nobel laureates, and ordinary people doing extraordinary things. In all those years, I've never met a guest more intent on tearing others down than building anything up." Meghan's eyes flickered, a brief flash of uncertainty betraying her composure. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Michael said, his voice gaining power with every word. "You came here claiming you wanted to talk about helping others, about making a difference. Instead, you've spent this entire interview insulting me, our viewers, and anyone who doesn't meet your impossible standards. You've shown exactly the kind of entitled, condescending attitude that turns people away from the causes you claim to represent." The room was electric. The crew, once frozen in discomfort, now watched in stunned silence as Michael Strahan, calm, good-natured Michael, finally pushed back. "How dare you speak to me like that?" Meghan snapped. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "Oh, I know exactly who you are," Michael said evenly. "You're someone who thinks a title gives you the right to belittle others. Someone who mistakes arrogance for intelligence, and someone who's forgotten that respect goes both ways." "I don't have to listen to this," Meghan said sharply, fumbling with her microphone. "Actually," Michael replied, his tone cool but firm, "you do. You accepted our invitation. You agreed to be here. The least you can do is show some courtesy to the people who welcomed you into their homes this morning." "This is ridiculous," Meghan said, standing abruptly. Her chair screeched across the floor. "I came here to have a serious conversation, and instead I'm being lectured by someone who wouldn't recognize real journalism if it hit him in the face." Michael didn't flinch. "Real journalism, Meghan, means listening. It means respect. It means understanding that important conversations don't require belittling others. You don't elevate yourself by tearing people down." "You don't know what you're talking about," she shot back, her voice rising so sharply that the sound engineer scrambled to adjust her mic. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about," Michael said, standing now facing her directly. "I've spoken with people who fight every day for something bigger than themselves, and they manage to do it with grace. You, on the other hand, have spent 20 minutes telling millions of people they're not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy enough to hear your message." Meghan's face reddened. "Your viewers don't deserve anything. They're sitting at home living their small, insignificant lives, pretending that watching morning TV makes them informed. They need to wake up. They need to be uncomfortable. Stop," Michael said sharply, his voice cut through the air like a blade. "You don't get to come on this show and insult the teachers shaping young minds, the healthcare workers saving lives, the parents doing their best every single day. Those people are the backbone of this country, and they deserve better than your contempt." His passion filled the studio. This wasn't just a defense. It was a statement of values. The crew watched, transfixed as years of patience and professionalism fused into one moment of righteous defiance. Meghan faltered, her voice losing its edge. "I never said—" "Yes, you did," Michael interrupted. "Every word out of your mouth has made it clear how little you think of the people watching right now. Here's a news flash. Treating people like they're beneath you doesn't make you better. It just makes you unpleasant." From the control room came a frantic wave of calls, but the producer stayed silent. This was live television history in the making. "I am a member of the royal family," Meghan shouted, her voice trembling now. "And I'm a man doing my job," Michael replied. "Your title doesn't excuse cruelty. It doesn't excuse arrogance. And it certainly doesn't impress me, or our viewers." "This is unacceptable," she snapped, looking around as if expecting someone to intervene. "I demand to speak to your producer. I demand an apology." "The only person who owes anyone an apology," Michael said firmly, "is you. You owe it to our viewers, to our crew, and to everyone who actually works to make the world a better place without needing to humiliate others in the process." Her face shifted from outrage to disbelief, then to something close to fear. "I'm leaving," she announced, ripping off her microphone and tossing it onto her chair. "That's probably for the best," Michael said quietly. "Security will escort you out." Right on cue, 2 guards stepped into view. Not threatening, just professional. Meghan pointed a trembling finger at him. "This isn't over," she hissed as they guided her toward the exit. "Yes, it is," Michael replied softly. As the studio doors closed behind her, Michael turned back to the cameras, straightened his tie, and took a steadying breath. "Well, folks," he said with a weary smile, "that wasn't quite what we planned for this morning. We'll be right back after the break, with a cooking segment that should be much more pleasant for everyone." The cameras cut. The studio went silent for half a heartbeat, then erupted in applause. Crew members clapped, some even cheering quietly. Michael Strahan had done more than salvage a disastrous interview. He had defended his show, his audience, and the quiet dignity of millions of hard-working viewers. By that afternoon, the exchange would dominate headlines and social media feeds worldwide, hailed as a masterclass in composure, courage, and integrity under fire.